Kerri Smith here. Today I kind of wanted to talk about the top 3 barriers to growth. Most institutions today, in particular credit unions, are either experiencing extraordinary growth or very stagnant growth, or in some cases even declining growth. So I'd like to just highlight 3 of the barriers that I've seen over and over throughout my time in credit unions and working with about 50 credit unions over a 30-year span, in both as a consultant and working in a credit union. And probably one of the biggest ones that I see, especially with those that I've consulted with, when I start looking at barriers to growth, the first one is an excuse-based environment. And what I mean by that is when anything arises, whether it's service, a product, or perhaps pricing, the first reaction of leadership and staff is to start making excuses. Say a process, opening an account, for instance. When I ask the question, why do you do it this way? They start making excuses about, well, regulatory, we have to do it that way. Or, well, we've always done it that way. And that is a huge red flag. So I see that an excuse-based environment breeds barriers and hinders growth. The second is what I call the fiefdom syndrome. And I've been into lots of credit unions and worked with credit unions that were seeing a decline or stagnant growth in loans in particular. And what I like to do is sit down and talk to loan officers because there's a lot of clues there. And one of the biggest barriers to growth that I've seen, whether it's management, a loan supervisor, or a loan officer, is when they're talking about their members and they're saying, well, they don't need that. Well, I'm going to be frank with you here. First of all, we don't get to decide what people need or anything of that nature. Because when you're coming to the table with that kind of mentality, it's a fiefdom. This is my money. I'm going to decide who gets it. And inevitably, the person sitting across the table from that loan officer is going to feel that energy, and they're going to feel alienated and that they're not worthy. And today we are bombarded with folks that feel like they get to tell us how and what we need. Now, whenever I question a loan officer, I will say, well, would you like somebody to decide what you need? Well, of course not. And what a lot of times when you have folks that are sitting in this empirical seat to be able to control other people's lives, it's heady. And feeling that power can and does breed. Because if you sit down with a lot of lenders, in particular, I mean, it happens in all departments, but lending is such a crucial part of what we do. You sit down with them and you will hear them say these things. Huge red flags. So sit back and start listening. The third barrier to growth that I've identified over the years is the acceptance of change. Now, everyone is experiencing change at every level, whether it's our own bodies. I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but every cell in your body has changed every 7 years. So we are renewing and changing every day. Whether we accept the change or not defines how we move through this life. And it's the same thing with our credit unions. Each of our credit unions has a life. It's a lifespan. And so how does your credit union deal with change? And we see change in a lot of different ways. We see regulatory change. We've seen the marketplace change, the environment in which we operate, depending on where you are, security, things like that. Fraud has become huge. So it colors everything that we do, but how accepting are we of change? If you're not open to it, if you're not embracing it, heck, the most vibrant credit unions in this country, they don't wait for change to come to them. They chase it down and own it. So if you have a group, or if you'd like to explore this further, I would love to come and speak to your groups about how do we get over these barriers so that our credit unions can actually thrive. I have examples of credit unions that did it well, some that are still struggling through it, and those that quit. So give me an opportunity. Give me a call, and I'd love to chat with you and your audience about these barriers to growth.